Hello, and welcome to the Quality Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Barfield. Before we get started, I want to mention that you've probably noticed that I don't publish episodes on a fixed schedule. That is intentional. My primary job, first and foremost, is managing the capital that has been entrusted to me by my clients. And I only record episodes when I have found a truly compelling company that I want to highlight. Because these episodes only come out when the research warrants it, I'd encourage you to subscribe so you don't miss one when it comes out. Today, we are profiling Timee, a Japanese company with a market capitalization of roughly 129 billion yen, which translates to about 850 million USD. I'm joined by Timee's founder and CEO, Ryo Ogawa, who started this business back in 2017 while he was still a college student to solve the frustrations that he saw in the traditional part-time labor market. To put it simply, Timee is an online marketplace for on-demand labor, or what we call spot work. You can think of it as an Uber for part-time, blue-collar jobs that require minimal training, such as positions in logistics, food service, and retail. The core value proposition here is all about removing friction. They've replaced the old, cumbersome application processes and delayed payments with a system where workers can pick up a shift within days and get paid immediately, while employers get the short-term help they need right when they need it. Timee essentially invented the industry in Japan, and they have parlayed that first mover advantage into a massive 75% market share. The network effects they've built are significant. They have over 10 times the number of job postings as their closest competitor, and a job fill rate of 88%, which is nearly double what others in the space are achieving. This has created a very sticky, high-margin business where 94% of the transaction volume comes from repeat clients. Despite that dominance, they've only captured about 0.7% of the total part-time working hours in Japan. As the country continues to deal with a shrinking labor force, I believe Timee is the technology bridge that will help close that gap for years to come. Lastly, it is worth mentioning that in the time since we recorded this interview and the publication of this interview, two notable events have happened. Firstly, Timee's largest competitor, Mercari Hallo, has decided to completely exit the market after aggressively attempting to scale up in the industry by offering 0% fees. Secondly, Timee has provided midterm guidance for the first time. In that guidance, they noted that they intended to grow revenues at a 20% compounded annual growth rate from 2026 through 2030, which implies that they expect to grow revenues from approximately 40 billion yen today to 100 billion yen by 2030. They also mentioned that they expect operating profit to grow at a 30% annual rate from approximately 8 billion yen today to 30 billion yen in 2030, or from a 20% operating profit margin today to a 30% profit margin. As it stands today, the company trades at approximately 15 times next 12-month operating profit. As always, this episode is not intended to be financial advice. Please do your own due diligence and draw your own conclusions, or allocate your capital towards an investment manager who might be capable of making intelligent investment decisions on your behalf. One final note is that we recorded this conversation with the use of a translator. So when you hear a female voice responding to my questions, that will be our translator who is interpreting on Ryo Ogawa's behalf. Without further ado, please enjoy the episode.
Okay, we are recording. Ryo, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Quality Investing Podcast. So let's jump into the first question. I'd love to just start with the basics for American investors who maybe have never heard of Timee before. Can you please explain what the company is and what the problem is that you solve for the people of Japan?
Right. So this, they are running the business for the the spot work, the part-time job where the workers can work find a job on the gig work, the platform. So they can find a gig work, by using just one application, easy to, get hired and start working. So maybe we have around the 15% of the entire labor, the population in Japan who are using this the application as a platform. And currently, we have about 180,000 the companies registered. So it could be also used by the students or also the housewife, and also that together with the gig work, of the normal employees who are working already full time. But mostly we're covering many jobs available from the logistics, the food restaurant industry, and also the retail, many other industries in Japan. So we have a severe chronic labor situation, which is getting worse and worse every day. So every day we have more and more needs. The company just needs one more person, just to cover the one day, of the labor that they are still, the missing. So because of this, the increasing demand, we have started this business from 2018. So it's been about 7 years, but we have already become already a big platform. So we have about 1,500 employees at this moment, and half of them we're dedicating them as the sales representative of Timee. So these people, they would help the business employer side to create the manuals. So even if the worker is coming for the very first time, they can start working immediately and become the contribution, to the company. So that's the foundation that these sales representatives are creating to support the business.
And can you briefly explain how you generate revenue?
So let's say, the sum of the normal, the average, the hourly rate, or wages in Japan is about 1,100 Japanese yen. And let's say the worker worked for 5 hours, which would make it 5,500 Japanese yen. And adding, the transportation fee, in the end, they need to receive about 6,000 Japanese yen. And they would add, Timee would add 30% as the take rate, so additionally 1,800 the Japanese, and that is their revenue.
And employers, the companies themselves are happy to pay that extra 30% take rate. What are their alternatives, I guess?
So other, the alternatives way would be using the dispatching, the agency, staffing agency, or the job boards where people would, the companies would post a job advertisement, to recruit people. So comparing to the dispatching agency, sometimes the logistic company would use, they can use Timee more, the affordably, cheaper, with a cheaper rate against the Timee, so Timee has the benefits, competitive, the benefits against the dispatching agency. And compared to the job board, where people would, companies will post the job advertisement, Timee can provide more, chance of supplying the laborers and the workers, as needed, and they can also supply the quality workers, if they're happy, to come in. So, these are the advantages, why, the employer side would still pay extra fee even to use the Timee. They still find the benefits to use the Timee service.
What's the I know one of your KPIs is your fill rate, and it's 85%, something like that, is your current fill rate of job postings filled. What is the fill rate of the alternative solutions?
So we, of course, don't know the precise, the numbers, or the KPIs of this number for the competitors, but we expect maybe they have it around the 60%, the level, which is the difference compared to the Timee. So whenever any, people who would like to, look for a job, as the spot work, part-time job, the first thing that comes up to their mind is going to be the Timee. So we have the first mover advantage by far.
Is that the primary incentive, the primary reason why a company might use Timee instead of a job board or a temp agency is the fill rate, or is it a reduced lead time, maybe a shorter time window to fill a job or something like that? Can you just talk to me about what the primary incentives are for companies to use Timee?
So the biggest, primary reason is definitely the fill rate, as you said. So we can definitely supply the people, the enough workers needed, by the industry. And the second reason will be we can supply the quality, the workers, because in the application, we have the algorithm where we have, the good, the rating and also the bad rating, with that the workers always given, the evaluation for their work, so you can see, who are the good workers, so we can definitely, supply the quality workers because of this algorithm. And then the third reason that could be, the good support, the time is supplying the employers with the human resources of their the sales representatives.
Now on the individual employee side, what are the primary incentives for an employee to use Timee versus a job board?
So the maybe the main reason is that the variety and also the volume of the works, job posted available nearby where they are, where they live, So nearby where they live, they already find many different types of the jobs or the industries and employers available, which is an advantage for the workers' side. And also the second reason could be, that they can receive the compensation of their work immediately right after they finish the work, So once you have work, that they receive the compensation on the same day because Timee covers the immediate payment. And also, we also have the system where the workers can, get hired and without going through the interview or without even submitting a resume. This is the very first time we offer this kind of service in Japan. We also assume this could be the first, the time to do so also in the world as well. So, this is based on, our trust, the system where we give once the worker completes the work, we give the review immediately. So we can definitely can provide the quality, of running the system. So for the worker side, it is very convenient, for them work. They can, they can work comfortably and, they immediately, so they feel free to, come, use the platform and work, in any way, they prefer to work.
Okay, so let me rephrase this to make sure I understand. What you're saying is your primary advantage for the employee side is one of scale. You offer more jobs across a wider breadth in your local region, and it's also the ability to get paid immediately.
Maybe I would say the primary reason for the employees, the worker side, would be the fact that they can work immediately, find a job and work immediately, and then also receive the compensation immediately. That's the biggest, the reason why they would use Timee. They can work immediately because they don't need to go through the resume.
What's the average lead time between a person accepting a job and then working the job? But I guess let me backtrack. What's the average lead time between job being posted, job being accepted, and job being filled for Timee versus job boards?
So maybe if you would use the job board where you place the job advertisement, you first, the post the advertisement and trying to, ask for the application. And once the application coming, you go through the interview, the resume. And if you, if you give the offer, the worker accept, going to the contract, the closing and then create a shift, that's how when they can start getting, the work, So that would probably take approximately maybe 1 month, a minimum, the cases. Whereas the Timee, if you, post a job, maybe 3 days in advance, you normally can get, that position filled, So that's the difference in the lead time, I would say.
That's an incredible difference. Let's backtrack a little bit to 2017. What was the original idea for coming up with this?
So he started his first business when he was 20 years old. That's the time when he first started the fashion apparel the business, which is more like the EC, the commerce business in the apparel, the industry, which didn't go well, unfortunately. So he closed the business, ended this business after 1 year. So at that time, he didn't have a lot of, the funds or the money. So he was covering, that, by working day to day, different, the jobs, different employers, finding the job available in the logistic industry or the retail, food or restaurant, the industry. So that he was working, like that. So he wanted something that he could be, he can use, in a very convenient way to find, these kind of jobs, So he wanted to create something, that's why he started, working on finding somebody to work on the programming to create the platform that will be useful for him, somebody like him. So that was when he was 21 years old.
It sounds like you've always been entrepreneurial. Is there any lessons you learned from that first business
Mm.
that carried you over to starting Timee?
So yes, his grandfather was also the entrepreneur. So he was, aware, of him, also being inspired by, this family, the family, the value of being the entrepreneur, since the very early, the ages for him as well. And what he learned, from the first, the business, that he still carries on will be it's very important to, achieve the maximize, the performance with the minimum, the development. And this can be done not just by talking, with the engineers in a normal, the way, for the programming, but he needs to convey what kind of experience, he wants to create, by this development. That, the idea and the image, is the important aspect to, the minimize, the lead time, the product development, and also maximize the performance.
Okay, great. You've obviously scaled Timee incredibly well in the seven years since you founded the company. Just to give the listeners for a sense of the scale that Timee operates at today, you have nearly 12 million registered workers, which is, as you said earlier, approximately 15% of the Japanese working population. You have nearly 400,000 employers that have registered an account with Timee, and you'll generate approximately 115 billion yen in transaction value, which equates to $780 million in USD terms. This is incredible success, given that you just passed the 8-year anniversary since the founding of this business. While I'm very interested in where Timee is today, I'm hoping that you might walk me through the early years of Timee, maybe from 2017 to 2020. I think everybody knows that two-sided marketplaces are attractive business models at scale because of the network effects, but they're also incredibly difficult to incubate because you need supply in order to generate demand, and you need to generate supply without initial demand. It's a classic chicken or the egg problem. So can you talk to me about those early years and how you overcame this challenge?
So basically, he started this business when he was in the third grade year of the university. So he already had the network of all the students, from the university. So that he made the people to register in this, the Timee, the application up to around 1,000 the people. So he already had the pool, of the worker side from the students, the connections, So he started by, trying to supply the employer side available from where the students are based, So that includes many food and restaurant industry. So, by spot, area by area, he was able to supply the good balance of the supply of the workers together with the supply of the employer side, So that started working well by spot, area by area. And then he moved on, to launching the mass TV commercial, the advertisement, the campaign, and that is in order to expand by far the pool of the workers, the site. He always wanted to create the system where the workers, a number of the worker is more than, maybe what, what the number of the suppliers, or the employers, would be. He thought that balance is especially important in this very beginning timing, because maybe, because the workers would, just, come to this platform anyway, even if, the quality of the work or the employer, is not necessarily, the good. They would come anyway. Workers would come to this platform anyway, because they don't have to submit the resume, don't have to go through the interview, so they can start working immediately. That's the biggest, the benefits, the workers can appreciate. They would, because of this, they would come anyway. So more and more workers come, and that's where, once you have this worker, employers would come, anyway, because that's the demand. So that's the system he always wanted to create, since the very beginning time. And that was the assumption. If this works, this business would work. If the workers are there, this business work, that was the assumption he had, the hypothesis he had since the very beginning timing. And that turned out to be, true, that's been proven, over the course of the business.
Now, what about the years following? In what ways did the coronavirus pandemic affect the still very early spot work industry in your business in particular?
So the initial timing, as he said, they had many employer side, the business, from the food restaurant industry, but this got affected by the COVID, the pandemic, the timing, because many of them just had to close or went out of the business, because many people just, had to stay home, so demand for the staying home, increased. So this business got affected. So that's the time that timing, shifted toward, to the logistic, the industry, because people started having more and more deliveries, going on. So the demand for the logistics side, expanding instead of the food and restaurant industry. So now, because of this shift happening back and forth, now we have three pillars, to support our business, the logistic, food, restaurant industry, and also the retail, So currently they have three pillars that's because the timing has always adjusted, to the demands, of the industry in Japan, from time to time, and this is why, we have expanding, this business to this scale.
Got it. Despite your impressive scale we mentioned earlier, you've got 15% of the working population in Japan registered on the app. That's very impressive. Can you give us a sense for the potential size of the industry, of the spot work industry, and what your penetration rates are today as a percentage of transaction value, of revenue, of hours worked, however you want to frame it? How can you give us a sense for Timee's penetration rate?
So we definitely see more room, to expand, this, the spot work, the industry. And also, in addition, Japan, as a society, we have been working on the reform of the way that people work, even at the company, So working at the company as an employee, you cannot do much of the overtime, the working, and you can only work 5 days a week, which is the labor, the labor, the laws, as well. So because of this restriction, the employees of the normal companies, they might have some, the free time, their availability of their time, where they can potentially would like to utilize, for a little extra gig, to get a bit of a surplus, of the revenue. So we also see the demand could be more expanded from the worker side as well. So the employees, of companies, these people constitutes around 20% of the total pool of the workers. They have it available, and also the segments where they see the fastest growth, among the workers pool is actually the seniors, the elderly people. So people who are above 60 years old, they are the one who's, who are growing inside the pool of the workers of the Timee. They're increasing. They're constituting around 7%, of the pool, So that, there are many, the variety of the lifestyles, available in Japan, and Timee covers, their position right in the middle, can access to any, the type of the lifestyles, of the people.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the employers themselves? To what extent are the more active users within Timee, to what extent are those employers becoming dependent on Timee? Are they using it every day to fill jobs? Are they extremely dependent, or only kind of somewhat dependent on Timee?
So the frequency of the usage, some, the many actually, the employees are use way more than, the one more than, once every quarter, Some of them, of course, use it almost daily, heavily dependent, on the Timee. Some of the business might use only the Timee for the limited, the occasion, maybe only the Saturday, Sunday, weekends, or when they receive the very big, the group, the reservation, that's the time they use the Timee. So these kind of frequency or the level of the dependency might be case by case. We don't really disclose, how heavy, that these employers are, these kind of precise number we don't disclose. But what I can say is that the ratio, of these heavily dependent, the employers, are increasing, definitely.
Okay, what about the employees side? You have disclosed some of this in terms of how you have a fairly large number of employees that are using Timee pretty frequently. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So we say, the number of the workers who have worked at least more than once, in their life, through the timing, that is above 1.6 million, the workers in total at this moment. And what we say as the core worker, what we define as the core workers is somebody who uses timing and actually work more than 8 times per month. That's what those people we say, we name them as the core workers. They cover more than, around half, of the entire field, the jobs get filled and actually worked, through the timing.
So we've talked about Timee versus the job boards, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about other competitors in the spot market, the spot work market. So you kind of invented this industry, and so you had a first mover advantage. But now there are competitors entering the space. Can you talk a little bit about who you compete with in the spot market and what gives you confidence that you're going to compete effectively against them?
Right. So basically, we now have maybe 4 main players in the spot the market. So many of them are coming from the HR, the companies, Persol, or some of the IT companies like the Mercari. They're the ones who have entered, into spot, the work market in Japan. So they, went into the full, the movement entry into this market from the last year. So over this 1 year, they have done, the many aggressive, the measures to compete against the Timee. For example, the take rate, Timee takes about 30%, take rate from the employer side, whereas these competitors, they were aggressive in the way they offer 0% take rate, to cover, the acquire the shares, from the Timee. That was their, the effort to do so, so but over this one past year, what's been proven is that even with these aggressive, the measures to offer, the cheaper, the solution, instead of the Timee, what the competitors faced is that they simply just couldn't supply enough people and also couldn't provide the sufficient, the good quality support, from the sales team, to the employer side. So even with this, the cheaper rate, they still, ended up coming back to the Timee, which takes a 30% take rate, So it's been proven over this one past year that, the price is not necessarily the most, the crucial, important, the part of running, the business, model. Creating the product, that is quality, works well, actually functions well is the most important part. That's been proven, over this one past year, looking at this competitive, the environment of this spot work industry. So as a result, we currently hold about 80% of the market shares of this spot work.
Is there any reason why a employer couldn't use multiple spot work services? What are the incentives to prevent them from using Timee and Mercari and various other spot work services? What are their reasons for not doing that?
So basically, this is in this kind of platform, it's different from the job board, So, it's the first come, first served, the basis. So let's say the one location of the business, they needed the two, the workers, in this particular day. So you would post, the job for 2 people in Timee and then post, the 2 people on the other platform. In the end, because it's first comes, first serves, you eventually could end up with a full, the workers, you don't need, you only needed 2, but you might end up with the 4 people, in the end. So that's the one of the, the struggle, for the companies to use, the managing through the multiple platforms.
So we've talked about how you've gained scale and how you might be protected from competitive threats, but now I would like to understand how you've been able to do this so capital efficiently. And to give some numbers here, according to your balance sheet, you've raised a little under 8 billion yen of total capital to date, which is about $54 million in USD terms. And you have about 5.7 billion yen in retained earnings. You are also guiding for around 7 billion yen of operating profits this year at a 20% margin. So you will almost generate the same amount of operating profits this year as the total amount of capital that you've raised cumulatively over the history of this business. I think as an American, I'm accustomed to seeing two-sided marketplaces incur significant losses for many, many years in an attempt to gain scale. But you haven't done that. So can you please help me understand how you've been able to do this in a capital efficient manner?
So maybe we would say, like that we definitely invest, this is the model, the business model. We can benefit from the very high, the profit, the margin, So of course, at the initial time, we had to invest, into the marketing, the side, the PR and the advertisement costs, to recruit the workers, create a workers pool. And then once you have the worker, you also have the clients as well. And both workers and client, they stay, on the platform because it circulates around they circulates around this platform because they both sides benefit and become dependent on this platform and among this the circulation of this ecosystem we benefit from the 30% take rate, which is benefits to the high the profit margin. So this is a very the profitable the business model. So of course the initial investment especially on the advertisement, to recruit the workers. Of course, that's some cost, they incurred, but once you establish that you have the first mover advantage, definitely by far, and it keeps running and running because of this ecosystem, under this, the very high profit margin, making it a very profitable business. That's why we have sustained this business in this way.
Maybe just a final question to wrap this up is, let's say we're having this conversation again 10 years from now. What would you consider to be a success for Timee? What is it that you want to achieve over the next decade? And what do you think are your primary obstacles to getting there?
So basically, we would definitely like to become the number one, the HR, the service in Japan. At this moment, the giant is a recruit, overall in this HR area. So we would like to, the beat them, to become number one HR service in Japan. This is our ambition. And, we would like to support this country's, the social infrastructures, So the Japan, maybe the construction workers, the logistics, they are suffering, from this labor shortage, severe chronic, the labor shortage, they could, the entire industry could collapse, at any moment, potentially in the future. We would like to support that, prevent this, from happening, so that's why we try to enter, to support the worker, the population as much as possible. Maybe potentially educating them is also necessary as well. So we would like to create an environment where worker can, the work very comfortably, at their own convenience. And this is going to, by creating that, we will become the service that the country cannot miss, that's where, like, of whom we would like to become. So, and also we are expanding to South Korea and also other, the Asian market as well, already working on this global, the expansion. So maybe, like over the course of the next 10 years, this global expansion could be, the key, to, create an idea of whom, we would like to become, within the 10 years, And also, the 10-year scale, we also have to consider that the labor, the industry, especially the logistics, because they suffer from the chronic labor shortage, they're also, already working on implementing the robotics, as well in their work, and also the operation. So, but we are the one, who knows, where do these simple tasks, the manual and the simple, the labors, the operation, the tasks are happening in this, the on-site, the area of this logistic area, because we supply the people, actual workers there. So we are the one who has the data. So we would like to also cover, the upper stream, of this demand of the industry, in more, the efficient way. So that's how, we would like to manage and expand their business maybe in this, next 10 years scope.
Great. Is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you think is important for listeners to understand?
So let's say, that he is, still, very young. He's 28 years old. So he can still manage the business over, the 10 or 20 years, the scope, he can remain at a very responsible position, to direct the business for a long time. And also, we are also the company with many, the young, the workers and the employees, our average, the age for the employees is actually around 30 years old. So we're relatively very young in the company along with him, as well. So that's why we can provide, the very good, the quality service, with more and more new ideas coming in to the both worker side and also the client side. And we're covering, across the many 30 the industries in Japan, not just, the logistic, the retail foods, but up to 30, the industry. So we have extensive, the data of these works, So utilizing that, could also generate more and more, the ideas of the new business coming in. So we also see the expandability of this business. That's something that you can, put a lot of expectations on us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. This has been great.
はい、ありがとうございました。本日お時間いただきまして、非常に
Yeah, thanks so
嬉しい
much.
です。Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.